we're getting grad and undergraduate students to do drag for the very first time, all in support of Skipping Stone, a charity that we love and support.
What's your story? What's your sign? It's like we're twin flames in a different life.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Queer in Alberta. My name is KELS, and I am your host. I am a queer Filipina-Canadian living here in Lethbridge, Alberta. I use she, her pronouns, and it is so much fun to introduce a new friend of mine.
Hi everyone, my name is Cassie. I use she, her pronouns. I come from BC, but I'm now living in Alberta, so I find myself queer in Alberta now. I'm taking my master's at the University of Calgary in design and technical theatre, and then hopefully I'm a freelance artist in a few months here. I'm done in a few months, I hope. If everything
Slay!
goes well.
I didn't realize, Cassie, that you were from BC. Had you told me that before?
I'm not sure if I have, but yeah, I'm from, I don't know how familiar you are with BC, because I just tell everyone Vancouver when they're not from the area.
Yeah, BC is Vancouver.
Yeah, basically, I'm from a little town like White Rock. It's right by the border, so it's very cute. If you ever get a chance, you should check it out.
White Rock, as you can clearly see, I know nothing about it. Is it like a big town, small town?
No, it's a tiny little town. It's by our bigger town called Surrey, so it's kind of like the border of Surrey and White Rock. Surrey's big, but White Rock's very small. I think the population is 20,000 or something.
Okay, yeah. So you chose Calgary, and you were like, yeah, that's the spot I want to go.
Well, it was really for the program more than anything, and I was kind of frightened at first because BC gives Alberta a very bad rap.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry to Albertans, but yeah, we get a bad rap over there. Because I was taking my undergraduate degree in Victoria, which is probably one of the most polar opposite cities to some in Alberta. And I was very, very terrified, but I was pleasantly surprised when I moved here.
See, that makes me happy. And it's so funny that you say that BC has this animosity towards Alberta, because it's so true. And I can't remember if I told you, but I recently in November was in Victoria for the BC Museums Association's annual conference. And everybody there was like, what are you doing here? But I started to have a little bit of fun with it. And what I did was there was this panel learning lab that I went to, and I got there first before everybody else. So it was just me and the host, and one of them had done some time in Alberta. And there was that kind of tone of voice when they were talking about it. So I was like, oh, what did you think about it? And she was like, it was Alberta. And I was like, oh, that's really funny because I'm from Alberta.
Yeah. Especially I think specifically Victoria too, just because it's a very different culture in Victoria than it is necessarily here. And so, not that it's bad and either one is bad, but yeah, it's just different.
Yeah. There's so much about your story that really interests me. So coming out before starting grad school, how have you found living here in Alberta?
I was definitely terrified, mostly for my queer identity reason, and also my social anxiety of will I make friends. And something that actually my mentor at my old university, he told me was, while Alberta may seem or get this rap, Calgary and cities are home of art and home of where everyone meets. What I've really noticed about Calgary is the art scene is thriving here. It's beautiful. There's so much art everywhere. And there's also so many people just like me here. Anywhere I move, there are going to be lots of people like me. It's just about finding those spaces. And I think that that's what changed my mindset about Alberta.
I'm so happy to hear that because, honestly, as someone that's grown up here, I've definitely met people that don't want to do that work that you're talking about to kind of discover these quote unquote underground or not as mainstream communities or spaces. And it makes me so sad because once you do kind of get your foot in the door and go on that journey, you realize, like you're saying, that Alberta is incredibly vibrant. It's a whole different way of mapping this province.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I've definitely felt some eyes more in some situations than I would have maybe in Victoria. I mean, I'm a proponent of a backwards hat in the summertime. I'm here for it. But I also get a lot of looks because of that sometimes. But I don't think that necessarily should define a whole location, because I think that's what's happening is negative stereotypes are defining a whole location. And I don't think it's actually as negative as people make it out to be.
you found a different experience and a different definition for Alberta while you've been here. I am truly so excited to have you on here. Like, you just have the most wonderful light and energy to your personality. And I'd love to know more about how you got to being this incredible person that you are today, with all of the outreach you do and the amazing projects that we've even got to do together.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been the kind of person to do too many things all at once. Probably
Slay.
One of the reasons that led to my ADHD diagnosis, but that's besides the point. When I came out in 2020. That's when I came out because, I had some time alone to think for a long time alone. And after that, it was like, I kind of started to become more open with myself and realizing that I can kind of cross both those things. I love the love of volunteer work and doing all these fun things all the time and being involved in a lot, and also supporting the queer community at the same time. And I've loved that kind of like blend of those passions.
When you say like you had a lot of time to think and stuff in 2020 that led to coming out, is that kind of like, that kind of theme of people going onto TikTok during the pandemic and seeing all this queer content and being like, oh my gosh, I think that's actually me?
Well, part of it was that, but also part of it was the day before lockdown, I drunkenly made out with a woman for the first time, and I was like, oh, oops, what does this mean? And then I was like in a full spiral for a few weeks, and then like was on TikTok, seeing all of this queer TikTok, and I think like 90% of my friends are queer. Like, I don't have a lot of straight friends, and I haven't even when I was younger and wasn't out. But I was like, no, I'm just a strong ally,
I'm just a really dedicated and devoted ally. That's why I kissed her.
Well, at the time I came up as bisexual, but now I prefer the pansexual label, but I don't get offended by either. I think it was like the fact that I also liked men took me longer to realize, and that like that was a possibility.
One of the themes that I honestly didn't expect to run into as much during this series as I have is that many of, say, the individuals that I speak to who are bisexual and, say, attracted to a heteronormative person, like say it's a guy and a girl or a girl and a guy, they don't feel very accepted in the queer community when they are not in, say, a queer, visibly queer relationship.
Yeah, so I came out as pan and then got my first boyfriend. And it was this weird, like, I'd never dated anyone, but I do remember this feeling of like, oh, if this ever ends, like, I have to date a woman next just to like cement it so that people don't think. Bisexuality, pansexuality is such a spectrum, and just because you date one part of that spectrum doesn't mean the other part doesn't exist. It's so hard, especially because I felt so vulnerable in coming out. Yeah, and then the process kind of then led to discovering the difference between romantic and sexual attraction. I kind of started to realize that there was a difference, and you can be sexually attracted to someone but not romantically attracted to them. And, that's led to some great sex. I mean, we all have it.
Oh my God. That difference between romantic and sexual attraction. Why has that been important for you to understand?
I mean, when you're surrounded by a bunch of queer friends all the time, you're always like, am I attracted to these people? It's not the same, like I am best friends with people, but it doesn't mean that I romantically want to, engage with them. And I think that carries through to my like dating life as well. Like, I don't have to be looking for a relationship. I can also just be having a good time, and that's okay. And there's a lot of stigma around that, and I hate that there is, because I think that's so taboo. Like, we're adults, and if we're consenting adults, then you do you, Understanding that helped me understand, first of all, other people in my life who maybe that's their life. And I also think it's allowed me to feel more free to explore myself. You don't have to date someone forever. You can, and that's okay. But it doesn't have to be the one narrative.
I love that we're chatting about this. I think in your early 20s, mid 20s, like, it's such a fun time to explore if you really let yourself. And through meeting other people, whether it's a romantic relationship or not, you learn a lot about who you are. As long as everybody is consenting and, honest with one another about what's going on, go have fun, bestie. I could not care less. In fact, actually, I'm rooting for you on the sidelines to just have the best time. And that ties really well to another thing you wanted to talk about in conversation together, which was education and representation, and how the lack of those things made it, I guess, more difficult for you to realize these aspects of your identity until a later age?
It's actually like 2 years before I came out. Okay, I was watching BuzzFeed at the time, and it was like Ladylike. I don't know if anybody knows the Ladylike show from BuzzFeed. I don't know if you know it, KELS. But there was like a group of 4 women, and there was one woman named Jen who was like the hottest person I've ever seen in my life. And
that's gay.
Yes, very gay. And I was like, at the time, I was like, oh shit, I have attraction to her. And I talked to my friend, and they said to me like, well, you might be queer, you might have those experiences. And I was like, oh, no, it's nothing. And then I left it for 2 years. I think that if I started to see those kind of people that were not only attracted to me, but also had personalities and also maybe identities closer to mine earlier, that I think I would have started to like process.
Seems like you're thriving. Have you found a lot of community?
Well, what was really nice is my cohort, who's at the university, so like the people who are also in the drama master stream, we have quite a few queer people. I mean, it's theater. We're going to have a lot of queer people.
Yeah.
And 2 of my other cohort members like identify as bisexual, and it was just really nice to have that. And one of them is my roommate right now. And what's really great is that we get to like watch things and we get to talk about, men, women, and non-binary people, and all of them being attractive. And I just think there's something like beautiful in that while I can talk to people who identify as gay or straight, and they can talk about one gender that they like, there's a big difference, I guess, for me in talking to somebody who also likes all people, because it's like you can express how you feel about anyone, and there's no like, I don't know what you mean, but good for you, like there's like this mutual understanding that's like really beautiful. I think, like you said, I had come out before, so it was kind of like my place where no one knew me before I was not like in the closet, I guess. And so it was like this, everyone knew that's who I was when I walked in the door, and it was a very different feeling, and it was a very beautiful feeling for me, I think, because it was like the first time anyone had met me at my 100%.
Oh, that really, I feel that. Like, again, growing up in the world that I did, I thought I was just going to be a straight girl and marry some guy from my church, and that would be it, And so to be able to stand here as this full identity and taking up so much space in ways that I never thought I would before, it's totally this really like meaningful moment to be seen and recognized.
Yeah, and I just started doing so much more work with queer people and being so accepted in that community. It's just, it's really been beautiful, I think.
So I guess like when we talk about stepping into identity again, what were the kind of things, like you talked about TikTok, was there anything else that kind of helped you in finding this place that you're at now?
I had this phone call with a friend, and I was talking about the issue. And she said, why are you so afraid to say it then if it's true? And I just said, I have to go. And I hung up the phone on her. And I just sat there and I cried for like a while.
Yeah.
And I think like a day or two later, I came out to another friend for the first time. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like, I can say it out loud and I can say it to her. So I told a lot of my close friends, and I waited to tell my parents in person because I just felt like I wanted to have that one-on-one. But yeah, I think it was that friend telling me like, why are you so afraid to say it if it's true, And it was just like such a, I've never also ended a phone call that upset or like. Yeah, I don't know. It was something about that moment that really like set it in stone for me.
Struck a nerve.
Remember, there was like at least a week of my time where I would just cry for a lot of the week because I didn't want it to be true, and I don't know why I didn't want it to be true. Like,
when we grew up, even if like your family was supportive, we still lived in a world where like I remember the first time I heard I Kissed a Girl by Katy Perry on the radio on the school bus of all things. It caused like this discourse amongst the kids where they were like, oh, that's so weird, or do you know what she's singing about? Like the conversations that were happening in our culture surrounding queerness and gay people were very, very different. So it makes sense that you like internalized maybe some of that fear.
I didn't even know gay people existed until I was in high school.
Preach. It reminds me of being like, I don't know, 15, and this is such a read. Like, I would go onto YouTube and just watch X Factor UK audition after X Factor UK audition because one of the judges I was like in love with, and I had no idea. I was like, wow, I'm just such a big, like, I really love talented people and this show. Even when clearly queer things were happening in my life, I had no way of cognitively recognizing that that's what I was feeling. It's just so funny to be able to sit here now, I think, knowing who we are and looking back at how absolutely clueless we were as kids because we just had no representation. Like, not to take it to a really depressing layer, but even like the protests at drag shows and stuff that are happening in Calgary now. When I started Queer in Alberta a year ago, I feel like I was releasing content into a very different atmosphere.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The negative rhetoric is exhausting and really sad. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really happy to talk about, while like some of the harder stuff like we as queer people have gone through, still talk about the beauty in queerness, because I think that's like so missed in the rhetoric right now. Like the only thing I see about queer people right now is how, you know, laws are being passed and all these kind of things about how we aren't meant to be. And I just think that while we need to be educated on what's happening, that doesn't need to be the whole narrative. I mean, like, I just don't even like going on my social media currently.
It's a unique kind of tightrope to walk in terms of a balancing act, because I think we do have the responsibility to stay vigilant, but also taking the time to take care of yourself, because it's not good for all of us to just constantly be consuming all of this really negative media and reporting.
I remember like a year ago, this is when I started to see your TikToks for the first time, was as soon as I moved here. And when I moved here, I was like, oh my gosh, this queer Alberta, this is like a cool person, and I just started following you, and I was like, oh my god.
I'm blushing a little bit on HD camera right now. Thanks, Cassie.
Well, you're great. You should know it.
I'm a very, I guess, quote-unquote femme-presenting lesbian, and you wanted to talk about, I guess, people's tendency to kind of conflate non-binary identity with butch identity.
Yeah, so it's something I've been experiencing a lot, and specifically once I moved to Alberta, which is quite interesting. I'm in theater, so we have to remember, like, everyone is asking for your pronouns the very first time you meet each other. Like, that's just like commonplace. But I've noticed that I get a lot of they them pronouns everywhere by people who don't know me, who are trying to be supportive of the community. And it's really quite interesting because there's a lot of non-binary people in my university's department of theater. I look a lot like some of the other non-binary people in our department and in our lives, and I often get they them pronouns over and over by different people. It's also made me question a lot of who I am, because I'm like, well, if everyone else sees that, does that mean that's my identity? Am I, like, able to look like this and be a woman? Like, yes.
I've been trying to be more aware of, like, the pronouns that I use and the way I ask, because I've seen a lot of videos from creators who talk about how, like, say they're with a group of new people and they're meeting folks, and then they're the only person that is asked, what are your pronouns? And it's like, okay, it's good that you asked me, but why are you only asking me? Why are you immediately assuming because I present my gender in this way that I am non-binary?
Hopefully the mindset we can work towards is just accepting of whoever you are and whatever you bring at whatever given time, and that's enough. You know? For those of you who aren't at the University of Calgary, I'm a part of the University of Calgary's Graduate Student Association's Gender and Sexuality Alliance Subcommittee. We call ourselves the GSA Squared because that's much faster and it's very fun. We've done a bunch of queer events throughout the year, and like KELS talked about, we did a coming out monologue that she hosted, and it was literally the best ever. Get KELS to host your events. She's great.
Thank you.
Doing this massive drag show on the 25th of March. It's called Newbie Night, a charity drag show. And we're getting grad and undergraduate students to do drag for the very first time, all in support of Skipping Stone, a charity that we love and support. And I'm very excited. I'm hosting in drag.
Yeah, you are.
And KELS is going to be in drag. I'm holding you to it.
Like only panicking a little bit, but I'm excited. I'm so excited. I want to just look so fucking chiseled.
Apparently I have the audacity to be like, I can host an entire event. So,
absolutely. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but we have such great drag artists too, and we have workshops leading up to it, lots of information, and KELS will be sharing it on her TikTok. But yeah, I'm very excited about the whole thing, and I'm very excited to just celebrate queer identity and drag in a time that drag is maybe not looked at as a celebration.
It's on March 25th.
Yes, March 25th, and we're gonna cut it off at 120 tickets, so get your tickets.
Cassie, is there anything else that you really wanted to chat about?
No, I think it's been really great, and I just hope that we all like feel better in the negative rhetoric that's around right now. Like, this is our positive space, and like we should hold on to those positive spaces. And I'm really happy that you're a proponent of positive space online. Thank you for talking to me. It's just been so fun. It's just been like a gab between friends, you know?
Yeah.
Everyone now gets to hear it.
Right. I always like to give my guests an opportunity to share any social media that they have if they want listeners to be able to stay connected.
My Instagram handle, I'm pretty sure is Cassiopeia_Homes. I'm going to hope that that's right. And you can find all of that from my website, cassiehomes.ca. So you can check out my designs and kind of what I stand for, and then all my social media is linked on there as well.
All right, everybody, go give Cassie a follow. She is just incredible, and I have no doubt going to do amazing things in the future. Come to our event, and yeah, thank you for tuning in.
We're dreaming.